The American narrative about Islam has forced many American Muslims to remodel their beliefs to fit the Western mold.
Looking into the mosque, because I don't go to the mosque that often.
Does this rebranding produce prosperity or self-delusion and moral decline? Do silenced parents teach their children the faith they hold, or do they recast their ideas to protect them from the same internal conflict that they once faced? After the fall of the Ottoman Empire, Western powers drew borders across the Middle East, carving nations as though they were pieces on a chessboard. These borders were not drawn to reflect the people who lived there, nor their histories, nor their cultures. They were drawn to serve the interest of foreign powers, to secure resources, and to maintain influence, to create states that could be controlled through compliant leaders. Communities that found themselves under puppet governments that existed to serve Western interests rather than the people, quickly realized they were unrepresented. Naturally, resistance movements emerged. People organized, communities rallied, and unrest became inevitable. Millions fled. They fled war, oppression, famine, and occupation. They came to the West, and to the United States in particular, because this was a country that promised opportunity, a country that understood that immigrants could contribute economically, pay taxes, increase GDP, and become a productive part of society. But what they brought with them was not only labor or economic potential, they brought memories, histories, identities, and a profound understanding of injustice. Back home, resistance movements continued to emerge, each one responding to both foreign and domestic threats. Yet the West's influence created contradictory narratives. Groups defending their communities, their people, their homeland, were branded as terrorists. Those who served Western interests, even if they opposed their own people, were praised as legitimate. Take Lebanon, for example. Hezbollah was born out of occupation and necessity. In 1982, Israel invaded southern Lebanon with the goal of crushing Palestinian resistance and reshaping Lebanese politics. From this chaos arose Hezbollah, a coalition of young clerics and fighters inspired by the Iranian Revolution and grounded in the principle of defending their homeland. Hezbollah's purpose was not expansion nor domination, but defense. Over decades, they succeeded in forcing Israeli withdrawal from much of Lebanon and defending the country during the 2006 war. Yet the Western narrative reduced them to a label: terrorist, erasing their role as a resistance movement deeply embedded in Lebanese society. The story continued into Syria. When the civil war broke out, extremist factions rebranded themselves multiple times, from the Free Syrian Army, al-Nusra, ISIL, and ISIS.
They've created ISIS. Hillary Clinton created ISIS with Obama.
And now, the new militias claiming to represent the Free Syrian people. Hezbollah, along with other regional forces, entered the conflict to fight these extremists, the very factions that had terrorized Iraq and Syria for years. And yet, in the West, their actions were still condemned, still framed as aggression. Fighting terrorists became a crime. Defending the innocent became a moral transgression. In Yemen, the Houthi story is similar. Once humiliated under British influence, the Zaydi Shia communities of northern Yemen rose against injustice. Their rebellion was not born out of ideology alone, but out of necessity to resist foreign manipulation and internal corruption. Their rise brought them into conflict with Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, both heavily supported by Western arms and intelligence. The result? A devastating war that starved the country and created one of the worst humanitarian crises in modern history. Iraq, The fall of Saddam Hussein in 2003 was meant to liberate the people. Instead, it birthed chaos. The Ba'athist regime, brutal and aligned at times with Western interest, collapsed under US invasion. The power vacuum was filled quickly by sectarian militias, extremist groups, and ISIS. These forces carried forward the same ideology that once terrorized the region, now taking new forms. Iraqi resistance movements, Shiite militia, and local fighters rose to defend their towns, their homes, their families. Tens of thousands of lives were sacrificed in the process. Yet Western narratives blurred this distinction between defenders and aggressors. And also, Iran's story is equally instructive. For decades, it was ruled by the Shah, a Western-backed monarch whose wealth and power enriched elites and foreign interests while leaving ordinary Iranians impoverished. The 1979 Islamic Revolution was not only a revolt against tyranny, but against the foreign domination that the West imposed on Iran. Since then, Iran has carved its path independent of Western influence, fighting on multiple fronts, defending itself from imperialist ambitions and against extremist forces seeking to destabilize the region. Its sovereignty has come at a price, decades of sanctions, isolation, and constant threats of war. Yet it stands as a model of a nation that acts on its own interest, representing its people even when that defiance makes it a target of propaganda and aggression. From Lebanon to Yemen, Iraq to Iran, the pattern is clear. Resistance is condemned. Submission is celebrated. When nations resist foreign domination, they are vilified. When they comply, they are praised. Yet, the people living through these realities, the ones defending their soil, their faith, their right to self-determination, do not see extremism, they see survival. Now consider the American Muslim watching these events unfold from afar. He understands the complexities. He sees that Hezbollah fights from necessity. He sees the Houthis rising from oppression. He sees Iraqi militias defending homes from ISIS. He sees Iran standing defiant against Western interference and extremist ideologies. He knows these are not tales of good versus evil. These are tales of sovereignty versus domination. And yet, in the West, he cannot speak. The language of resistance has not been monopolized. Words like jihad, defense, self-determination have been stripped of meaning, misunderstood, and weaponized. He feels the weight of the double standard. He watches bombs dropped in the name of security and democracy. Inside, he knows the injustice, but outwardly, he remains silent. Not because he lacks conviction, but because speaking invites scrutiny, a misplaced word, an honest opinion, or a misunderstood post can bring job loss. Survival requires silence, a betrayal of truth, yet a protection against consequence. However, this silence becomes generational. His children grow up hearing one story at school and another one at home. They sense the fear, not of God, but of consequence. They inherit restraint, caution, and political quietism. Faith that once moved mountains now lives in whispers. Its courage diluted, its voice faint. And in Dearborn, this dynamic is painfully visible. The city, once the proud heart of Muslim America, finds itself under attack, not with bombs, but in perception. Headlines across media scrutinize. Politicians cast suspicion. The message is clear. Know your place, and instead of rising to meet it, many retreat inward. Fear breeds complacency. Comfort replaces purpose. Food, sports, entertainment, these become the shield that protect the soul from moral discomfort. And yet, the social media posts continue. Outrage is performed online. Hashtags are shared, stories retweeted. But when sacrifice is required, financially, time, risk, silence is the answer. The American Muslim disappears when real action is called for. Ask him to lobby as others lobby for their people. Ask him to organize, to fund, to build institutions. Ask him to risk comfort and reputation, and he vanishes. His courage lives online, his faith in storage. The byproduct of this thinking is spiritual decay. When man places his trust in the state rather than God, obedience replaces consciousness, comfort replaces conviction, safety in conformity becomes more important than righteousness. Faith becomes quiet, private, safe. A religion that fears consequences rather than demanding courage. And yet, the struggle is not over. The American Muslim still has a choice. Silence is not neutral. It either preserves falsehood or challenges it. It can raise a voice for truth, for justice, for the oppressed, and finally align actions with his faith. But history does not remember those who stayed silent. It remembers those who stood when standing costs everything. The question is not what the world has done to Islam, but what the Muslim has allowed the world to do to his soul. Faith is not silence. Faith is courage.
سيخيفه فقال إمامنا زين العابدين كلمته التي أصبحت درسا وشعارا وطريقا: أبالموت تهددني يا ابن الطلقاء، إن القتل لنا عادة وكرامتنا من الله شهادة.